Did Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany for over 16 years, know that the Did Angela Merkel, Chancellor of Germany for over 16 years, know that the coronavirus could have been linked to a Chinese laboratory? It's a question that has fueled speculation among political commentators and conspiracy theorists alike since the coronavirus outbreak first emerged. In a world shaken by the pandemic, whispers of government cover-ups and withheld intelligence have drawn intense attention to global leaders, and Merkel, known for her calculated demeanor, is no exception. But is there any truth to these claims? Coronavirus could have been linked to a Chinese laboratory? It's a question that has fueled speculation among political commentators and conspiracy theorists alike since the coronavirus outbreak first emerged. In a world shaken by the pandemic, whispers of government cover-ups and withheld intelligence have drawn intense attention to global leaders, and Merkel, known for her calculated demeanor, is no exception. But is there any truth to these claims? To unpack this question, we need to rewind to the early days of the pandemic. In late 2019, reports of a mysterious pneumonia were trickling out of Wuhan, China. At first, the world watched cautiously as Chinese authorities scrambled to identify the virus's origins. The official explanation pointed to a wet market in Wuhan, where live animals were sold in close proximity to humans, a plausible scenario given previous zoonotic outbreaks like SARS and MERS. But almost as quickly as the wet market theory emerged, so did an alternative explanation: the possibility of a laboratory leak from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which was known to conduct research on coronaviruses. This laboratory, one of the most sophisticated of its kind in China, had previously published studies on bat coronaviruses resembling SARS-CoV-2. For some, the coincidence was too glaring to ignore. As governments across the globe scrambled to deal with the spiraling health crisis, intelligence agencies quietly started their own investigations. United States officials reported early suspicions about the lab leak theory, and subsequent documents suggested that China's response was not as transparent as it could have been. Questions lingered about whether Beijing was withholding information, and whether other world leaders might have been privy to details the public was not. So, where does Angela Merkel fit into this narrative? Germany has long maintained close economic ties with China. During Merkel's tenure, China became Germany's largest trading partner, with billions of euros exchanged in goods and technology each year. Merkel's diplomatic approach to China was often described as pragmatic, focused more on economic collaboration than ideological clashes. But critics argue this pragmatism may have come at a cost when it came to demanding transparency in the midst of a global pandemic. Throughout 2020, Merkel was notably cautious in her comments regarding the origins of COVID-19. While she repeatedly stressed the importance of international cooperation in combating the virus, she avoided making public accusations about China's handling of the outbreak or suggesting links to the Wuhan lab. Some interpret this silence as indicative of her approach to diplomacy. Merkel was never one to engage in public confrontations without substantial evidence. Others, however, see her reluctance as a sign that she knew more than she was letting on. By mid-2021, the lab leak theory regained traction after U.S. intelligence released new findings about the Wuhan Institute of Virology and its potential connection to the outbreak. What followed was a renewed push from the scientific community to investigate all possible origins of SARS-CoV-2, including the lab. Yet Merkel, facing her final months as chancellor, still didn't engage with these allegations directly. Instead, she supported calls for an independent investigation led by the World Health Organization, a response consistent with her preference for multilateral solutions. But what about Germany's intelligence agencies? Did they provide Merkel with information pointing to a lab origin? And if so, did she deliberately choose not to share it?
The truth is, very little information has surfaced about what Germany's BND, its Foreign Intelligence Service, knew regarding the pandemic's origins.
Germany, like most countries, relied heavily on data shared by China and the WHO during the crisis, alongside findings from peer nations such as the US and France. If Merkel had access to intelligence suggesting a lab leak, it would have likely come through these channels. But there's no concrete evidence indicating that she withheld critical information. Of course, the geopolitics surrounding this issue can't be ignored. Germany, as the economic powerhouse of Europe, was in a precarious position. Publicly accusing China, a major trade partner, of negligently or deliberately causing a global pandemic would have been a diplomatic earthquake. Merkel likely weighed the potential consequences carefully, opting instead to emphasize the need for cooperation and scientific inquiry. This approach may have appeared overly cautious, but it was consistent with her broader strategy as a leader, who often sidestepped direct blame for the sake of stability. So, did Merkel know more about the origins of the coronavirus than she let on? The answer might depend on how much credence you give to the prevailing theories. The evidence linking SARS-CoV-2 to a laboratory remains, to this day, contested and inconclusive. Scientists are divided, intelligence agencies are cautious, and China continues to control much of the data essential to resolving the mystery. Merkel's silence was typical of her style. Calculated, deliberate, and rooted in a preference for diplomacy over speculation. But the broader implications of this controversy extend far beyond Merkel alone. The pandemic revealed how intertwined politics, science, and international relations have become in an age of global crises. Regardless of what world leaders like Merkel knew or chose not to reveal, the question of accountability remains. Did the global community, including scientific institutions and governments, do enough to demand transparency? And if similar outbreaks occur in the future, will the world be better prepared to face the consequences? Angela Merkel's legacy is marked by reasoned pragmatism, but the pandemic underscored the limits of even the most measured leadership. For now, any definitive answers about what she knew, like the origins of the virus itself, remain elusive.